There's a difference between silence and absence. After 14 years of listening to the forest, I'd learned to distinguish them. Silence is alive. It breathes, it waits, it holds potential. Absence is a void, a hole where something used to be. On March 17, 2024, Station 7 went silent. My name is Dr. Elliot Marsh, and for 14 years I maintained a network of autonomous acoustic monitoring stations throughout the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness in Idaho. 23 stations total, each one solar-powered, weatherproof, designed to record continuously and transmit data via satellite uplink every 72 hours. The project started as standard ecological research, documenting wolf pack dynamics, tracking elk migration patterns through vocalization analysis, monitoring the acoustic footprint of climate change on alpine ecosystems, legitimate science, funded research, publications in peer-reviewed journals. But Station 7 was different. Station 7 was secret. I'd placed it in 2010 after hearing rumors from an old Forest Service ranger about the White Ghost, a solitary figure occasionally spotted in the most remote section of the wilderness. Albino, massive, moving through terrain no human could access without technical climbing gear. Most scientists would have dismissed it. I was curious enough to investigate. Within 3 months, I had my first recording. A vocalization unlike anything in my reference library. Deep, resonant, with harmonic complexity that suggested intelligence, not instinct. I ran every analysis, checked every database, consulted colleagues without revealing the source. Nothing matched. Over the next 14 years, I documented 2,147 vocalizations from the entity I came to call Echo, the albino Bigfoot of the Selway Bitterroot. I watched her patterns change with seasons, heard her voice mature from what I believed was late adolescence into full adulthood, tracked her territorial range across 47 square miles of roadless wilderness. She became the most comprehensively documented unknown subject in cryptozoological history, and nobody knew except me. I kept the recordings private, built a separate encrypted server, never mentioned Echo in any published work. She existed in a parallel research stream, acknowledged by exactly one human being on the planet. Me. Station 7 transmitted every 3 days like clockwork, for 14 years. 1704 successful transmissions, never missed one, until March 17th. The data packet never arrived. I waited an extra day. Sometimes weather interfered with satellite uplink. Then 2 days, 3, a week, nothing. On March 24th, I hiked to the station, 8 hours through terrain that would kill an inexperienced hiker. And when I reached the site, I found something that made my blood run cold. The equipment was intact, fully functional. Solar panels charged, memory cards recording, but something had used it, and what it recorded would change everything I thought I understood about intelligence, communication, and the line between observer and observed. Station 7 sat in a narrow valley at 7,400 feet, surrounded by old-growth subalpine fir and whitebark pine. I'd chosen the location specifically for its isolation, 3 miles from the nearest trail, accessible only by scrambling up a scree slope and traversing a knife-edge ridge that discouraged casual hikers. The station itself was minimal. Weatherproof housing mounted 8 feet up a dead snag, solar panel array, microphone array with 360-degree coverage, and a satellite transceiver. Everything designed for longevity and autonomy. I'd visit maybe twice a year for maintenance, otherwise letting it run undisturbed. When I reached the site on March 24th, everything looked normal at first glance. The housing was secure. Solar panels were clean and angled correctly. No signs of bear damage or weather destruction. But when I opened the access panel, I found something impossible. The memory card had been removed and reinserted. Backward, not damaged, not missing. Backward, inserted into the slot the wrong way, which shouldn't have been possible with the card's physical design unless someone had forced it. I pulled the card carefully, examined it. No damage, no contamination. But when I checked the equipment's internal logs, I found something that stopped me cold. The station had stopped transmitting on March 17th at 14:37 hours, right after a scheduled recording session. The logs showed the card had been accessed at 14:41 hours. 4 minutes later, someone had opened the housing, removed the card, and done something with it. Then they'd tried to put it back, failed, and left it jammed in the slot. I pulled my laptop from my pack and loaded the card's contents. The most recent files were from March 17th as expected, but there was something new, a file that shouldn't exist. The naming convention for all my recordings followed a strict protocol. Station date time duration. Example, SO7 Maven 2240317 due $100 400. WAV would be Station 7 March 17th 2 a.m. 40-minute duration. This file was named differently. Echo speaks, listen.wav. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The file was enormous. 6 hours 14 minutes of continuous audio. Recorded on March 17th starting at 08:23 hours. I plugged in my field headphones and pressed play. For the first 30 seconds it was standard forest ambience. Bird calls, wind, the distant sound of the creek that ran through the valley below. Then, Echo's voice. But different from any vocalization I'd recorded before. She was speaking, not calling, not signaling, speaking. The vocalizations were structured into clear phrases with pauses between them, like someone delivering a lecture or telling a story. The pitch varied dramatically, sometimes low and resonant, sometimes rising into frequencies that bordered on singing. And beneath the primary vocalizations, there were others, softer, responding, like she was teaching someone. I listened, transfixed, as 6 hours of the most sophisticated non-human communication I'd ever encountered played through my headphones. At the 2-hour mark, something changed. The vocalizations stopped, replaced by a new sound. Rhythmic, percussive. Echo was drumming, striking something resonant, creating patterns that had clear structure. Simple rhythms building into complex polyrhythms. Music. She was making music. At 4 hours, silence. Then footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, getting closer to the microphone array. My breath caught. In 14 years, Echo had never approached the station directly. She'd always maintained distance, treating it as a boundary she wouldn't cross. But now she was approaching. I could hear her breathing. Deep, measured, calm. Then a new sound. Scratching. She was manipulating something. The sound of the equipment housing opening. The scrape of metal on metal. A pause. Then impossibly her voice came through with perfect clarity. Close mic quality, like she was speaking directly into the microphone. And the vocalization was different. Slower. More deliberate. With pauses that felt intentional, like she was trying to enunciate. She was attempting to communicate with the equipment. With me. I listened to 37 minutes of her trying different vocalizations, different patterns, different approaches, testing, experimenting, trying to trigger a response from the passive recording system. When no response came, she made a sound I'd never heard before. Low, sustained, falling in pitch. It sounded like disappointment. Then the sound of the housing being closed, footsteps retreating, and 6 more minutes of silence before the recording ended. I sat there in the forest, my laptop on my knees, trying to process what I'd just heard. Echo hadn't damaged the equipment. She'd investigated it, tried to interact with it, and when she couldn't make it respond, she'd attempted to remove the memory card, probably seeing me do it during maintenance visits, understanding at some level that the card contained something, information, sound, memory. She'd tried to communicate, and when the equipment didn't respond, she'd tried to take the record of her attempt, but she'd failed to reinsert the card correctly, which meant she understood the card's function, but not its precise mechanism. She had observational learning capabilities, tool manipulation abilities, and problem-solving skills, but the fine motor control for the card slot had defeated her. And then she'd left, taking nothing, damaging nothing, just leaving behind evidence of her attempt. I checked the rest of the memory card. In the days following March 17th, there were no more vocalizations, no more visits to the station. Echo had gone completely silent, which meant either she'd moved out of range or she was waiting, testing whether her attempt at communication would generate a response. I had a choice to make. I could remove the file, format the card, restore normal operations, pretend this interaction had never happened, continue my passive observation as if nothing had changed, or I could respond. For 14 years I'd been the observer, the scientist, the documentarian who never interfered, never influenced, never crossed the boundary between subject and researcher. But Echo had just crossed that boundary herself. She'd made herself known as something beyond a research subject. She'd demonstrated agency, curiosity, intelligence. She'd reached out, and I had to decide whether to reach back. I pulled out a fresh memory card from my equipment bag. Then I did something that violated every principle of scientific methodology I'd ever learned. I recorded a message. Creating the message took 3 hours. I recorded, deleted, recorded again. How do you communicate with an intelligence you don't understand? What could possibly bridge the gap between human and whatever Echo was? I started with the assumption that she'd been listening to my visits for 14 years. She'd heard my voice during equipment maintenance, talking to myself, narrating my work, occasionally playing back recordings to verify quality. So she knew human speech patterns, even if she didn't understand the language. I decided on simplicity, short phrases, clear intonation, and most importantly, reciprocity. She'd shared something profound in that 6-hour recording. I needed to acknowledge it. I pressed record. Echo, I heard you. I understand you were trying to communicate. This is my response. I paused, unsure how to continue. Then I did something instinctive. I replicated one of her vocalizations. Badly. My human vocal anatomy couldn't produce the harmonics, couldn't reach the low frequencies. But I tried, mimicking the pattern, the rhythm, the inflection. Then I spoke again. I can't speak your language, but I'm trying. Just like you tried with the equipment. I recorded several more patterns. Her drumming rhythms, reproduced by tapping on the equipment housing. Her melodic sequences, hummed in my limited range. Each one followed by simple English phrases. I hear you. I recognize this. Thank you for sharing. Finally, I said, I'm going to leave this here, this station. It will keep recording, and I'll listen. Every time. If you want to communicate, I'll hear it. I promise. I saved the file to the new memory card, labeled it marshresponds.wave, and inserted it into the station. Then I modified the playback settings so the file would play on repeat through the external speaker I'd installed years ago for equipment testing. Every 3 hours, for 30 seconds, my message would broadcast into the valley. Not loud enough to disturb the ecosystem, but loud enough that if Echo was listening, she'd hear it. It was reckless, unscientific, a complete violation of observational research protocols. If anyone in my field discovered what I'd done, my career would be over. But I couldn't do nothing, not after what I'd heard. I hiked back to my truck and drove the 8 hours home to Missoula. Arriving near midnight, I uploaded the full 6-hour recording to my secure server, then spent the next 2 days analyzing every second. The acoustic complexity was staggering. Echo's vocalizations covered a frequency range from 40 Hz to 3000 Hz, far beyond normal primate capabilities. And the structure, there were repeating patterns, variations on themes, call and response sequences that suggested she was teaching someone. The drumming sequences followed mathematical patterns, not random percussion, structured rhythms based on prime number intervals, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, then complex polyrhythms building on those foundations. This wasn't instinctive behavior. This was transmitted knowledge, culture. On the 4th day, Station 7 transmitted. Right on schedule, 72 hours after I'd left. My heart hammering. I downloaded the data packet. 3 days of recordings. I started with the most recent. For the first 40 hours, nothing. Standard forest sounds. My message playing on its 3-hour cycle. Wind, birds, creek water. Then, at hour 41, Echo's voice. She'd returned, but she wasn't alone. I heard multiple individuals, at least 3 distinct voices. Echo's crystalline tone, a deeper bass frequency that had to be male, and a higher, lighter voice. Juvenile maybe, or female. They were responding to my message. Every 3 hours when my recording played, they'd fall silent. Listen, then vocalize in response. Matching patterns, creating variations, building on the themes I'd clumsily attempted. They were teaching me. Over the next 2 weeks, Station 7 captured an unprecedented acoustic dialogue. I'd modify my messages, trying new patterns, introducing variations, attempting to build vocabulary, and they'd respond, sometimes correcting my attempts, sometimes expanding on them, always patient. We were developing a proto-language, shared meanings constructed through sound. I documented everything obsessively, created a lexicon of patterns and their apparent meanings. Greeting seemed to be a 3-note ascending pattern. Acknowledgement was a short, sharp vocalization followed by silence. Question ended with rising intonation. But there were concepts I couldn't understand. Complex patterns that seemed to reference things I had no framework for. And occasionally, Echo would produce vocalizations that made the other voices fall silent, like she was sharing something important, something sacred. On April 30th, something changed. The morning transmission included a new file in the memory card, not a recording made by the station, but a file that had been manually added. Someone had opened the equipment again, inserted a device, and copied a file to the card. The file was named, "Come Alone Tomorrow, Noon." Wave. I played it. Echo's voice, but different, structured, deliberate, and unmistakable in its intent. She was using the patterns we'd established, combined in a specific way. The pattern for you, the pattern for movement toward, a temporal marker we'd developed for next daylight cycle, and a final pattern we'd built, meaning solitary. She was asking me to come alone, tomorrow at noon. This was no longer passive documentation. This was active communication, an invitation, or possibly a demand. And I had less than 24 hours to decide if I'd accept. I spent that night reviewing 14 years of data, every recording, every observation, looking for any indication of danger, of aggression, of threat. I found none. Echo had always maintained distance, had never approached human camps or trails, had shown consistent patterns of avoidance. Until now. Until I'd responded to her attempt at communication. I thought about protocols, about safety, about the fact that I'd told no one about this interaction, which meant if something happened to me, no one would know where to look. But I also thought about the privilege I'd been given. 14 years of documenting an unknown intelligence. And now that intelligence wanted to meet. How could I refuse? At 6 a.m. on May 1st, I loaded my pack and started the 8-hour hike to Station 7. No weapons, no GPS beacon, no backup plan. Just me, walking toward an encounter that would either be the culmination of 14 years of work or the biggest mistake of my life. I reached the ridge above Station 7 at 11:47 a.m., 13 minutes early. I took the time to catch my breath, hydrate, and scan the valley below. The station was visible from my position, a small gray box on the dead snag, solar panels glinting in the midday sun. The valley looked empty, normal, but I knew she was there, watching, waiting. At 11:58, I started down the scree slope. My footsteps were loud in the stillness, stones clattering, boots scraping against rock. I wasn't trying to be quiet. She needed to know I was coming, needed to track my approach, needed to feel in control of the encounter. I reached the valley floor at exactly noon. Station 7 was 50 yards ahead. I stopped at what I judged was a respectful distance and called out, "Echo, I'm here, as you asked." Silence. Just whined through the pines and my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. Then, from behind me, a sound, a deliberate footstep on the forest floor. I turned slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. She was there, 20 feet away, standing at the tree line where forest met meadow. My first thought was, she's magnificent, 8 feet tall easily, covered in white fur that was almost luminous in the dappled sunlight. Not pure white. There were subtle variations, cream and silver tones like Arctic fox fur. The proportions were similar to human but scaled differently. Longer arms, broader shoulders, head that seemed to emerge directly from the torso with minimal neck. But it was her face that stopped me cold. Not human, but not ape either. The bone structure was heavy, with pronounced brow ridges and a prognathic jaw. But the eyes were blue, pale blue, and they held intelligence that was unmistakable. She was watching me with the same careful attention I'd given her for 14 years. Assessing, evaluating, deciding. We stood there for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds. Then she made a sound. Low, resonant, one of our established patterns. Acknowledgement. I responded with the same pattern, my voice shaking. She tilted her head slightly, then made another vocalization, more complex. A combination of patterns we'd developed. Observation, plus duration, plus reciprocity. You've been watching me for a long time. Now I watch you. I nodded, understanding. Yes, 14 years. I'm sorry I didn't know how to approach you, how to make contact without. She made a sharp sound. Not aggressive, but stopping me. Then she vocalized again. Language yours, plus understanding mine. Punt negative. I don't understand your language. Right. Sorry. I forget. I took a slow breath, then used our pattern system. Gratitude, plus communication attempt, plus your action. Thank you for trying to communicate. She responded immediately. Gratitude, plus communication response. Your action. Thank you for responding. We'd just completed the first reciprocal exchange between human and Sasquatch using a mutually constructed communication system. The magnitude of it hit me like a physical force. I felt tears streaming down my face. Echo watched this display of emotion with what seemed like curiosity. Then she moved. Not toward me, parallel, walking slowly along the tree line, demonstrating her movement patterns, letting me observe. She limped slightly on her left leg, an old injury from the look of it, and there was scarring on her right shoulder, 3 parallel lines that looked like claw marks. She'd survived. For how long? 20 years? 30? How old was she? After completing a semicircle around my position, she stopped and gestured, a sweeping motion with one long arm, indicating the forest behind her. Then she vocalized, "Others, plus, family, plus, location there. My family is back there." My breath caught. May I see them?" She cocked her head, considering. Then, "Fear, plus, you, plus, question. Are you afraid?" "Yes," I admitted, "but also, honored, grateful." She made that stopping sound again. Then she used a pattern we'd established for affirmation, followed by a new sound I hadn't heard before. Warm, almost like laughter. She started walking into the forest, stopped after 10 feet, looked back. The message was clear. Follow, but carefully. I followed. She led me deeper into the valley, along paths only large animals could navigate, under fallen logs, through dense undergrowth, across the creek on stones that required careful balance. She moved with practiced ease. I struggled but kept up. After maybe 15 minutes, we reached a clearing I'd never discovered despite 14 years of reconnaissance. It was sheltered on 3 sides by rock walls, with a small spring feeding a pool in the center. And there were others. A large male, probably 8.5 feet tall, covered in dark brown fur. He stood protectively at the clearing's edge, watching my approach with obvious wariness. 2 juveniles, maybe 5 feet tall, lighter brown, with proportions that suggested late childhood. They huddled behind the male, curious but frightened, and an elder, gray-furred, moving stiffly, with eyes that held the weight of decades. She sat near the spring, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Echo vocalized, long, complex patterns directed at her family. I caught some of the patterns we'd established: human, communication, observation, long duration, but most of it was beyond my comprehension. The male responded, deep, resonant, clearly skeptical. Echo responded with what sounded like reassurance. Then the elder spoke. Her voice was different, rougher, like someone who'd lived through hardship. She vocalized directly at me, and I recognized one clear pattern. Question. Echo translated using our system. Purpose, plus, your presence, plus, question. Why are you here? I thought carefully. Then I used every pattern we'd established, combining them as clearly as I could. Understanding, plus, different minds, plus, coexistence possibility, plus, knowledge sharing, plus, respect, to understand, to learn, to share knowledge, with respect. The elder watched me for a long moment. Then she made a sound, short, sharp, decisive, and the juveniles approached, slowly, cautiously, until they were standing maybe 6 feet away, examining me with naked curiosity. One of them reached out, touched my hand. Their finger was warm, calloused, surprisingly gentle. I held still, barely breathing. This was trust. This was acceptance. This was first contact. Over the next 2 months, I visited the clearing 7 times. Each visit was at Echo's invitation, communicated through patterns left at Station 7. She'd arranged stones in specific configurations that I learned to read. Come tomorrow. Wait 3 days. Bring food. I documented nothing visually. No cameras, no video. Just audio recordings and detailed field notes stored in encrypted files. The scientific value was incalculable. Verified, repeated contact with multiple individuals of an unknown hominid species. But publishing would destroy everything. So I kept silent. And I learned. The family unit consisted of 5 individuals. Echo, adult female, approximately 25-30 years old based on dental wear. Granite, adult male, Echo's mate, early 30s. Silver, elder female, Echo's mother, 60+ years. Moss and River, juveniles, both male, estimated 8 to 10 years old. They had names, or rather, acoustic identifiers. Each individual had a signature vocalization pattern that others used to reference them. Echo was my translation of the crystalline rising tone pattern the others used for her. They communicated with sophisticated grammar, subject-verb-object structures, temporal markers, conditional statements, abstract concepts like tomorrow, maybe, because. This wasn't primitive proto-language. This was fully developed linguistic capability. They used tools. I watched granite strip branches to probe insect colonies, saw silver use stones to crack nuts with techniques that showed clear learned behavior. They carried important items, medicinal plants, special stones, in woven grass containers. They had culture. The juveniles played games with rules. Echo sang to them in the evenings, melodic patterns that seemed like stories or teaching songs. Silver instructed them in plant identification, demonstrating which species were edible or medicinal. And they had knowledge of humans. Extensive, careful knowledge. Silver had survived at least 6 decades by avoiding human contact. She knew our patterns, our technology, our dangers. Through Echo's translation, she told me stories, encounters with hunters, near misses with development, the slow retreat of her people as human presence expanded. We were many, Echo vocalized, using our developing shared language. Now few. Human expansion, territory loss, family groups separated. How many? I asked. Total population? Echo conferred with Silver. The response, Northwest region, maybe 50, maybe less. Knowledge uncertain. 50 individuals, possibly fewer, scattered across millions of acres of wilderness, facing the same pressures as any large mammal in the modern world. Habitat fragmentation, climate change, genetic bottlenecks. They were critically endangered, and nobody knew they existed. On my 5th visit, Echo asked me a question that changed everything. Human others, knowledge of us. You tell. Question, will you tell other humans about us? I'd been avoiding this question, avoiding the ethical nightmare it represented. But she'd asked directly, and I owed her honesty. I don't know, I admitted. If I tell, humans will come. Scientists, maybe government. They'll want to study you, protect you, but also control you, limit your freedom. Understanding, Echo vocalized. Then, alternative, silence your part. We continue hiding. Or you stay silent and we keep hiding. Yes, but I struggled to express the complexity. Habitat loss continuing, human expansion continuing, climate change affecting territory. Without protection, survival uncertain. Echo translated for Silver. The elder's response was long, impassioned. Echo rendered it for me. Human protection, previous experience, different people, long time ago. We've dealt with human protection before. What happened? Echo vocalized a story I needed her to repeat 3 times before I understood. Decades ago, Silver's youth, there had been contact. A human who'd found them, befriended them, promised help. He'd reported their existence to authorities. Within weeks, the area was flooded with researchers, trappers, and curiosity seekers. Silver's family had been forced to flee. In the chaos, her sister had been shot by a frightened hunter. Her father had disappeared, captured, killed, or driven so far away he never returned. The human who'd made contact had been mortified, but the damage was done. We learn, Echo vocalized. Human knowledge of us equals danger to us. Always. I sat with that for a long time. They were right. History proved it. Every discovered indigenous population had suffered. Even with the best intentions, contact brought disruption, disease, displacement. But this was different. They weren't human. They wouldn't qualify for human rights protections. At best, they'd be classified as endangered wildlife, studied, managed, tracked. At worst, they'd be seen as threats, competitors for resources, problems to be eliminated. I won't tell, I said finally. Not without your permission. This is your decision, not mine. Echo vocalized to her family. I watched them debate. Gestures, vocalizations, obvious disagreement. Granite was adamant about continued secrecy. Silver seemed resigned to inevitable exposure. The juveniles didn't fully understand but sensed the tension. Finally, Echo turned to me. Agreement temporary. Observation of situation. Reevaluation later. We'll wait and see. Decide later. It was a compromise. And it bought time. But on my 6th visit, the situation changed. I arrived to find the clearing abandoned. Equipment scattered. Signs of hasty departure. And at Station 7, a message in stone arrangement. Danger. Humans coming. Hide necessary. My blood went cold. I checked the station's recordings. 2 days earlier, voices, human voices, hikers off trail, heading toward the valley. They'd passed within a quarter mile of the clearing, close enough to hear, close enough to find evidence. I searched the recordings frantically. There, faint but audible, one of the juveniles vocalizing, a high-pitched call that didn't sound like any local wildlife. And then clearer, "Dude, did you hear that? Probably just elk." "That wasn't elk, that was... I don't know what that was. Let's check it out." The recording cut off, but I knew what had happened. Echo's family had detected the humans and fled, but not before being heard. I pulled my phone. No signal this deep. I'd have to hike back to file a false report, create a diversion, anything to keep people away from this area. But as I turned to leave, I saw something that stopped me. Fresh tracks, human tracks, boot prints, leading toward the clearing. Someone was still here, still searching, and I had to find them before they found what they were looking for. I followed the tracks, moving as quietly as I could. They led away from the clearing, higher into the valley, toward a series of caves I'd marked on my maps but never fully explored. Smart. If Echo's family was hiding, the caves would provide shelter from observation, but the tracks meant someone was pursuing them. I found him 20 minutes later, a man in his 30s, expensive outdoor gear, DSLR camera with a telephoto lens. He was crouched behind a fallen log, lens aimed at a cave entrance 50 yards ahead. I approached from behind, deliberately stepping on a dry branch. He spun, startled. "Jesus, you scared me. What are you doing here?" I kept my voice neutral, professional. "Hiking." "You?" He was defensive, which meant he was doing something he knew was questionable. "I'm Dr. Elliot Marsh. I conduct research in this area. This valley is part of an ongoing ecological study. You're in a restricted zone." It was a complete lie. There were no restricted zones here, but he didn't know that. I didn't see any signs, because we don't advertise. It attracts exactly this kind of intrusion. I gestured at his camera. "What are you photographing?" He hesitated, then apparently decided honesty was safer. "I'm with a cryptozoology research group. We've been tracking reports of unusual vocalizations in this area. Yesterday, my partner and I recorded something significant. We're trying to get visual confirmation." My stomach dropped. "Where's your partner?" "Circling around. We're trying to cover multiple angles. You need to leave. Both of you. Now. Look, I appreciate you have work here, but we have just as much right. You're disrupting an active research site and potentially contaminating 14 years of data. I can have Forest Service law enforcement here within 2 hours. They will cite you for off-trail travel in sensitive habitat. The fine is $5,000, or you can leave voluntarily." Another lie. I had no such authority, but I sold it with enough confidence that he wavered. "Let me get my partner. We'll clear out." He pulled out a radio. "Jess, we need to abort. There's a researcher here. Says we're in a restricted zone." A woman's voice crackled back. "Copy. Meet you at the rally point." He turned to me. "We're going. But for the record, we're not the only ones interested. There are forums, online communities. People know something's in this wilderness. It's only a matter of time." "Then let it be time," I said. "Let it happen naturally, without harassment." He left, hiking back the way he'd come. I waited until he was out of sight, then approached the cave entrance. "Echo," I called quietly. "They're gone. It's safe." No response, but I felt watched. "I know you're here. I know you heard everything, and I need you to understand, this is just the beginning. More will come." Silence. Then, from deep in the cave, Echo's voice, quiet, cautious. "Knowledge spreads. Human curiosity increases. Understanding correct. Yes, I'm sorry, I've tried to protect your location, but fault not yours." She emerged from the shadows but stayed deep in the cave entrance. The others were behind her. I could sense them even if I couldn't see them. "Inevitable, we know." Silver predicted. "What will you do?" "Move again, deeper wilderness, continue hiding." "For how long?" "Echo, you're running out of territory. In 10 years, 20 years. Then we end." Her vocalization was flat, resigned. "Species end, like mammoth, like dire wolf. Extinction natural." "It doesn't have to be." "Alternative?" She moved closer, and I saw frustration in her posture. "Human protection. Results?" She gestured at the forest. "Silver's family, destroyed by human protection. Father killed, sister captured then died. Migration forced. Trauma permanent. That was decades ago. Things are different now. Conservation science, wildlife management, legal protections, words. Echo's vocalization was sharp. Human promises, broken always. Pattern observed. Throughout territory, throughout time. She was right. I knew she was right. Every indigenous population, human or otherwise, that had been protected by colonial powers had suffered. The protection was always for the protector's benefit, never the protected. Then what? I asked. I just watch you disappear? Document your extinction? Choice yours. Echo tilted her head. But understanding this, observation your work, documentation your work, both actions, interference. I never interfered. I maintained strict observational protocols, response to me, teaching me language, creating communication. She gestured at me, at herself, at the space between us. This conversation, interference maximum, change everything, cannot undo. I felt like I'd been struck. She was absolutely right. For 14 years, I'd told myself I was a passive observer. But the moment I'd responded to her attempt at communication, I'd crossed a line. I'd influenced her behavior, her understanding, her relationship with human technology. I'd interfered, and now her family was in danger because of it. I'm sorry, I whispered. You're right. I should have. Regret pointless. Echo's vocalization softened. Decision made. Consequences experienced. Learning occurred. Both sides. What did you learn? She moved closer, until she was standing at the cave entrance in full daylight. Humans not all same. Variation exists. You different. Curiosity without harm. Respect without ownership. First experience this type, but it wasn't enough. You're still in danger. Always danger. Bear, cougar, avalanche, human. She gestured broadly. Life in wilderness. Survival not guaranteed, but choice remains ours. Freedom maintained. I understood then. She wasn't asking to be saved. She was asserting her right to live and potentially die on her own terms. What do you want from me? I asked. She considered for a long moment, then. Documentation continuation, voice recording, history preservation. If extinction comes, evidence existed, memory maintained. You want me to keep recording? To create a record? Yes. Not for publication, not for science community, for future, when humans ready, when protection means freedom, not control, evidence waiting. How will anyone know when humans are ready? Not my problem. That sound again, like laughter. Future humans' decision. We provide data. They provide wisdom. Hopefully. It was trust of the most profound kind. She was asking me to be a bridge between her people's present and humanity's future. To keep their voices alive in digital form, waiting for a time when we might finally be worthy of the knowledge. I'll do it, I said, for however long you allow. Then return to station. Recording continuation. But, visiting here? She gestured at the clearing. The valley. Ending necessary. Attention too much. Risk too high. I understand. Gratitude mutual. Learning mutual. Memory permanent. She backed into the cave. Goodbye temporary. Not goodbye. Just until. She made a sound I'd come to recognize as affirmation. Then she disappeared into darkness. I stood there for a long time before hiking back to Station 7. It was the last time I saw her. The online forums exploded within a week. The two cryptozoologists had posted their audio recordings, truncated, degraded, but clear enough to reignite interest in the Selway bitterroot. Definitive proof of Sasquatch vocalizations, their post claimed. Recorded May 3rd in remote Idaho wilderness. Analysis confirms non-human origin. The audio went viral in cryptozoology communities. Debunkers claimed it was elk bugling or mating foxes. Believers declared it irrefutable evidence. Media outlets picked it up. First local news, then regional, then national. Within 3 weeks, the Forest Service issued a statement. We're aware of increased public interest in unusual wildlife reports. We remind visitors to practice responsible recreation and respect wilderness regulations, which only fueled more interest. By mid-June, there were sightings reported almost daily. Most were misidentifications, bears, elk, shadows, imagination, but some were real. I could tell from the descriptions. People were getting closer to Echo's family. I monitored Station 7 obsessively. The recordings showed the family had abandoned the valley entirely. No vocalizations, no activity, just empty forest. But on June 18th, I received a data packet that nearly stopped my heart. Someone had tampered with Station 7 again. The housing had been opened, the memory card accessed, and a new file had been added. Warning, wave. I played it immediately. Echo's voice. Tight, urgent, angry. She used our communication system, but the patterns were sharp, emphatic. Humans many. Territory invaded. Juveniles threatened. Situation critical. Station location compromised. The recording continued. I heard voices in the background, human voices, multiple individuals moving through the forest near the station. Definitely something big came through here. Look at the size of that print. Everyone stay together. Maintain communication. An expedition. An organized search party. Echo's voice came again. Recording system. Discovery imminent. Removal recommended. Evidence elimination necessary. She was telling me to shut down Station 7, remove the equipment, eliminate the evidence that had drawn so much attention. But she'd also left something else. Buried in the audio file, beneath the primary message, was a secondary recording. Quieter, personal, her singing, the teaching songs I'd heard her use with the juveniles. Complex, beautiful, cultural knowledge encoded in melody. She was giving me one last gift, a record of her voice, her culture, her existence, in case she didn't survive. I hiked to Station 7 the next day. The 8-hour approach felt like walking to an execution. When I reached the ridge overlook, I saw them, a group of maybe 15 people camped in the meadow below. Professional equipment, organized search patterns. This wasn't amateur enthusiasm. This was a coordinated expedition. I watched through binoculars as they examined the area around my station. One of them, a woman with clipboard and camera, was documenting everything. Another was taking plaster casts of prints near the creek. They were turning Echo's home into a research site. I waited until nightfall. Then I descended, circling wide to approach Station 7 from the opposite direction. The expedition had set up camp 300 yards away, close enough to monitor, far enough for me to work quickly. I reached the station at 2 a.m., disabled it, removed the solar panels, the housing, the memory cards, packed everything into my bag. Then I did something that hurt more than I expected. I disabled the microphone array, severed the cables, made the station completely non-functional. 14 years of continuous recording. Over, because exposure had finally come. As I was finishing, I heard footsteps. Someone approaching with a flashlight. "Hey, what are you doing?" I turned. A young man, maybe 25, holding a thermal scope. One of the expedition members. "Removing equipment," I said flatly. "That's the acoustic station we've been tracking. You can't just... It's my equipment, my research, and I'm terminating the study." "Why? We're so close to documenting..." "Documenting what? A family trying to survive? So you can make them famous? Put them on magazine covers? Turn their home into a tourist destination?" He looked stunned. "You know about them. You've seen them." I didn't confirm or deny. Just finished packing my gear. "Please," he said. "We're not trying to exploit them. We want to help, establish protections, create conservation plans. By invading their territory with 15 people and enough equipment to run a field laboratory, that's help? It's documentation, evidence. Without it, they have no legal protection. They've survived for thousands of years without legal protection. They'll survive without your help." "Will they?" He stepped closer. "Dr. Marsh, yes, I know who you are. I've read your published work. You're a scientist. You know habitat loss is accelerating. Climate change is affecting alpine ecosystems. Large mammals need protection to survive the 21st century. Large mammals with human-level intelligence don't need protection. They need privacy, respect, and for people like you to leave them alone." I pushed past him and started hiking back toward the ridge. He called after me. "We're not leaving. We're committed to 6 weeks in the field. We'll find them with or without your help." I didn't respond, just kept hiking. Back in Missoula, I erased everything. Every recording not already backed up to my secure server. Every GPS coordinate. Every field note that might reveal locations. Then I did something that violated every principle of scientific transparency. I contacted the Forest Service with false information. Dr. Marsh reporting potential grizzly den activity in the Upper Selway Bitterroot. Grid coordinates 45.7231, 114-8872. Request temporary closure for public safety. The coordinates were half a mile from Echo's last known location. Close enough to restrict access, far enough to not reveal her actual position. The Forest Service issued an emergency closure within 48 hours. No entry without permits, no camping, enforced by law enforcement patrols. The expedition was evacuated within a week. I'd bought time, maybe months, maybe a year, but I'd also crossed a line I could never uncross. I'd lied to federal authorities, falsified safety reports, used my credentials to manipulate conservation policy. For science? No. For personal conviction that I knew better than everyone else what was right for Echo and her family. I'd become exactly what I criticized, someone who made decisions for them without their consent, and I had to live with that. Station 7 remained dark for 3 months. No transmissions, no data, just absence. I told myself I'd made the right choice. The expedition had been dispersed. Public interest was waning. The false grizzly report had created enough bureaucratic friction to discourage casual searches. Echo's family was safe, probably, but on September 22nd I received a package. No return address. Postmarked from Salmon, Idaho. Inside was a memory card and a note, handwritten. Found this near the old station site. Thought you should have it. A friend. My hands shook as I loaded the card. One file, dated September 19th, labeled Final Message. Wave. I pressed play. Echo's voice, but changed. Strained. Exhausted. She didn't use our pattern system. Instead, she vocalized long, complex sequences in her own language, communicating something I couldn't translate, but I could hear the emotion. Loss. Resignation. Goodbye. In the background, other sounds. Granite's bass frequencies weak and intermittent. Silver's rough vocalizations barely audible. And silence where the juveniles should be. Something had happened. Something terrible. The recording continued. Echo attempting different vocalizations, trying to communicate across the language barrier without our shared patterns. Then, near the end, she switched to something I recognized. She was singing, the teaching songs, all of them, one after another. A complete oral archive of her culture delivered in one continuous performance. This wasn't a message. This was a preservation effort. She was recording everything she knew before. Before what? The file ended. No explanation, no context, just that crystalline voice singing into darkness. I drove to Idaho immediately, hiked the 8 hours to Station 7 despite the area closure. I didn't care about regulations anymore. I needed to know. The valley was empty. The caves showed no signs of recent occupation. The clearing where I'd first met Echo's family was abandoned, but there was evidence. Scattered, disturbing, shell casings, 3 of them. High-caliber rifle rounds, near the tree line above the clearing. Blood, a significant amount, dried dark on the rocks. Not human, and drag marks. Something large had been dragged from the clearing toward the access trail, the path that led to the nearest road, 15 miles away. I followed the trail in a state of mounting horror. Every 100 yards, more evidence, more blood, signs of struggle. At mile marker 7, I found it. A piece of white fur, snagged on a branch, still carrying that distinctive luminous quality, now stained with dried blood. Echo's fur. I stood there, that piece of fur in my hand, understanding what had happened. Despite the closure, despite the restrictions, someone had found them, and someone had shot her. I pulled my satellite phone and called the Forest Service, reported an illegal hunting incident, possible poaching of protected species, gave them coordinates. They arrived within 6 hours. 2 law enforcement rangers and a wildlife forensics specialist. What species? They asked, looking at the blood evidence. Unknown large mammal, I said carefully, but definitely illegal discharge of firearms in a closed area. They documented everything, collected samples, took photographs, opened an official investigation, but I knew they'd never find the culprit. The casings were common caliber. The blood would show unknown DNA that would be filed as unidentified. The investigation would stall and close within months. Whoever had done this would never be caught. I spent 3 days searching the wilderness, checking every cave, every possible refuge, calling Echo's name pattern into the forest. Nothing. On the 4th day, I found Silver. She was in a cave system 2 ridges over, ancient, dying, her breathing shallow and labored. She saw me and made a sound. Recognition. not fear. I approached slowly, knelt beside her. "Where are the others?" She vocalized. Broken patterns I barely understood, but the meaning was clear. "Gone." Echo. A long, falling tone. The pattern we'd established for death. "Granite?" "The juveniles?" Silver gestured weakly. "Scattered. Fled." Whether they'd survived? She didn't know. "Who did this?" She made a complex vocalization I couldn't parse, but she followed it with a gesture, mimicking shooting with an invisible rifle, then pointing at her own white-gray fur. "Trophy hunters. They'd wanted the albino. They'd found her." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "This is my fault. If I hadn't responded, if I hadn't created the station, if I'd never—" Silver reached out with one shaking hand, touched my arm, made a sound, gentle, absolving. "Not your fault. Choice was hers. Life was hers. Death was hers." She pulled something from beside her, a bundle wrapped in bark. The carved figure Echo had given me 14 years ago, plus something new, a memory card, wrapped carefully, protected. She pressed it into my hand, made one final vocalization. "Remember, tell when ready, not before." Then she closed her eyes and stopped breathing. I sat with her body until nightfall. Then I buried her in the cave, sealing the entrance with stones, marking it with a cairn that wouldn't mean anything to humans, but that felt necessary. A grave for the elder, the memory keeper, the last of her generation. I hiked out and drove home in a fog of grief and guilt. The memory card contained everything: hours of vocalizations, songs, stories, teaching sessions between Echo and the juveniles, conversations between her and Granite, Silver's voice, rough with age, sharing oral history, an entire culture, preserved, hidden, waiting. The final file was Echo herself, recorded sometime between our last meeting and her death, using our shared pattern system one last time. Human friend, gratitude maximum, learning mutual, memory permanent, species ending maybe, but voice remaining, culture remaining, in your keeping, trust absolute. Publish when humans ready, not before. Judgment yours, choice yours, responsibility yours. Then her singing, one last time, the teaching songs, the culture songs, the songs of a people who'd lived in these mountains for millennia and were now gone, or maybe not gone, maybe scattered, maybe surviving in pockets so remote, so isolated, that they'd finally achieved the invisibility they'd always sought. I'd never know, but I had their voices, and I had a responsibility. It's been 11 months since Echo died. 11 months since Station 7 went dark permanently. 11 months since I became the sole custodian of an entire culture's recorded history. The Forest Service investigation closed after 6 months. Insufficient evidence to pursue charges. The DNA samples came back as unidentified large primate, possible contamination or mishandling. The shell casings led nowhere. Echo's death is officially a mystery. Unofficially, it's forgotten. The cryptozoology forums moved on to new sightings, new excitement. The Selway Bitterroot is still remote, still wild, but no longer the hot zone it was last summer. Interest faded, as it always does when evidence remains ambiguous. Life continues. The wilderness persists, and I carry the weight of what I know. I've spent 11 months wrestling with Echo's final instruction. Publish when humans ready. When is that? How do I judge when our species has matured enough to receive this knowledge with wisdom rather than exploitation? In 10 years? 50? 100? Maybe never. I've consulted ethicists, anthropologists, conservation biologists, always hypothetically, never revealing what I actually possess. The consensus is troubling. There's no framework for this situation, no precedent for first contact with a non-human intelligence that specifically requests delayed disclosure. Some argue I have an obligation to science, that knowledge this profound must be shared regardless of consequences. Others insist I should honor Echo's wishes absolutely, even if it means the recordings stay hidden forever. I've made a decision. Not the right decision, I'm not sure that exists, but a decision. I've created a dead man's switch. The recordings, along with documentation and contextual notes, are stored in encrypted form across multiple secure servers. If I die or become incapacitated without canceling the protocol, the files will automatically release to a curated list of recipients: indigenous rights organizations, ethical cryptozoologists, conservation NGOs, and academic institutions with strong records of indigenous collaboration. Not the media, not government agencies, not anyone who'd treat this as a discovery to be exploited. And I've included Echo's final message. Her exact words, translated as accurately as I can. Publish when humans ready, not before. Judgment yours. The recipients will have to make their own ethical choices, whether to publish, whether to search for survivors, whether to create protections that might actually protect rather than simply observe. I'm passing the responsibility forward, because I've learned, painfully, that I'm not wise enough to bear it alone. But I'm not waiting idly. I've spent 11 months advocating for wilderness preservation, attending Forest Service meetings, pushing for expanded roadless area designations. Not because I know Echo's family is still there, I don't, but because if they are, or if others like them survive anywhere, they need territory, space, absence of human interference. I've also been learning. I hired a linguist, told her I was analyzing theoretical primate communication structures. Together, we've been building a grammar, a dictionary, a linguistic profile of Echo's language. If there are survivors, if contact happens again, someone should be prepared to communicate, to negotiate, to listen. And I've been searching, carefully, quietly, not in the Selway Bitterroot. That area is still too hot, too watched. But in other wilderness areas, other remote corners where reports persist, I've found nothing definitive, but I've found suggestions, tracks that don't quite match known species, vocalizations that trigger that same recognition I felt 14 years ago, evidence that's always ambiguous enough to dismiss, but never quite silent. Maybe it's wishful thinking. Maybe I'm seeing patterns where none exist, desperate to believe Echo's people survive. Or maybe they're exactly what they've always been, just barely beyond proof, just outside verification, surviving in the gaps of human knowledge. Last week I received another package. No return address. Postmarked from Grangeville, Idaho, 30 miles from the Selway Bitterroot. Inside was a smooth river stone and a bundle of owl feathers tied with braided grass. Nothing else. No note. No explanation. But I recognized the pattern. The same gift arrangement Echo had shown me in that first meeting. The same symbolic structure. Someone knows I'm looking. Someone knows I remember. And someone wants me to know they're still out there. I don't know if it was Granite, one of the juveniles, now grown, or another group entirely, relatives, neighbors, strangers who've heard the story through their own oral traditions. But it was communication, acknowledgement, a message across the gap. We survived. We remember. We're still here. I placed the stone on my desk, next to Echo's carved figure, a shrine to a friendship that crossed species, a reminder that intelligence and consciousness are far more distributed across this planet than we acknowledge. And I made myself a promise. I'll keep searching, keep learning, keep advocating for wilderness that's truly wild. Not for Instagram photos or weekend adventures, but for beings we don't understand who deserve existence beyond human observation. I'll keep Echo's recordings safe until the moment, if it ever comes, when sharing them will do more good than harm. And I'll keep listening, because somewhere in the remaining wild spaces, voices are speaking that we're only beginning to comprehend. Station 7 is dark, it will stay dark, but I'm not giving up. Echo taught me that knowledge isn't just about discovering, it's about discernment, about knowing what to share, what to protect, and when silence is the most powerful communication of all. She recorded me for years before making contact, studied me, judged my intentions, decided I was trustworthy. I'm doing the same now, waiting, watching, listening for the moment when humans are ready to know what shares these mountains with us. That moment hasn't come yet, but when it does, if it does, I'll be ready, with evidence, with respect, with a story about an albino being named Echo who taught me that the greatest discoveries are the ones we choose not to make public, the ones we protect, the ones we honor with silence, until silence is no longer protection, until disclosure becomes preservation, until we're finally wise enough to meet them as equals.